Welcome back for another helping of oysters, clams, and cockles, bringing you the best TV shows and movies weekly in an easily digestible podcast packed with laughs by me, Ross Bolen, and my dear friend, Mr. Barrett Dudley. Barrett, final episode of 2020. It feels good. It feels really good, man.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad it feels good for you.
It does. Yeah. I'm glad you're glad I feel good.
No, it's good, man. It's you know, the sad part is that it feels like everything should just like click back to normal on January 1st, and it won't do that. In fact, it's the only reason, like, as you know, people, everybody's very excited about 2020 ending, 2021 coming around.
Sure.
That's all well and good, but what you forget is that we actually have like the darkest, coldest, worst months still in front of us. And there's not even any holiday cheer. The people will take their lights down. You're going to start driving around. There's going to be dead Christmas trees strewn across lawns and on the curbs, ready to just go get, tossed in the compost or chipped up in the wood chipper. And, it's going to be, it might get worse before it gets better, especially given that statistically we will see another spike after everybody got together with their families and sucked face and hugged and did all that stuff. Not that I blame anybody for doing that. I mean, I get it.
Always
totally.
The pessimist. Always the pessimist. This one focused.
But there will be very, very there will be a skyrocketing number. Now on the bright side, it's windy today.
How is that a bright side?
I don't know. It's not really. No,
here's what I would argue, Barrett. Here's
the bright side. Here's the bright side, Ross. There was a lot of great TV this year, and we're going to talk about that today.
There was a lot of great TV this year. I would also argue, though, that the point for me is not like, oh, we're going to get to 2021 and magically everything's going to be better. No. I just don't want anything to do with this year anymore.
Right.
I would argue the holidays were the most stressful part of this entire year for me. I'm glad they're over. They're fun. Yay. Got to see the family. Great. Now back to the fucking cave and the grind. And I just want the year to be over so that we can have a new calendar. I realize, like, pandemic wise, we're going to be in the same situation or worse situation than we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a fuck. Like, in terms of that, we got the vaccine out. It's all going to get handled in due time. I do not care anymore. I am no longer focused on, like, when are we going to get back to doing this stuff? Like, no, I'm just trying to figure out ways to be happy now because this is
right. That's a smart way of looking at it. To be honest,
as far as the end of the year goes, it's just like a perspective thing for me. But to your point, it's also about wrapping up everything we watched this year, television wise, and really, honing in on what our favorite things were. So that's exactly what Barrett and I are going to do today, as well as talk about a few other things. But first, today's episode of OCC is brought to you by Leesa, makers of the greatest mattresses in the world. I always argue your mattress is up there with, like, your living room and bedroom televisions in terms of important purchases you make for your home. Leesa knows how important rest is to a better life. Leesa is the foundation of a healthier, happier you. And to Leesa, a bed is more than just a place to sleep. It's a place for relaxation and rest. All of their products at Leesa have been thoughtfully designed to go beyond creating a comfortable bed to transform your bedroom into a sanctuary you want to spend time in. I sleep on the Leesa Legend, and I slept on the Leesa Hybrid for years and years before that. They're both phenomenal. You can't go wrong with any of the Leesa mattresses. I have Leesa pillows, Leesa blankets. Barrett, tell us about your Leesa life a little bit.
Well, I like to jump in my deliciously comfortable Leesa bed, and then I like to go Leesa. And then, that's how it goes. Every night I sprint to my bedroom to jump onto my Leesa mattress, and then I yell, Leesa, Billy Costa. And then I go to and then I get great night's sleep because I have a Leesa mattress.
And then you're just cozy. Yeah. That's it. Leesa believes all people should have access
that
to
can be your life,
relaxation.
people. That can be your life too.
It can be. As such, they make it easy for their customers to know they've made the right choice through their social impact initiatives tied to each purchase. Leesa donates one mattress for every 10 they sell through organizations that work in causes like foster care prevention. To date, they've donated more than 33,000 mattresses through more than 1,000 nonprofits. Leesa mattresses are made in the USA, in-home delivery, and setup is available. Financing is also available. Don't miss out, Clam Fam. Live healthier. Live happier by resting deeper. Order today and get 15% off any mattress for a limited time at leesa.com/dragon. Use the promo code DRAGON. 15% off any mattress at leesa.com/dragon. That's LEESA.com/dragon. Promo code DRAGON. And now it's time for everybody's favorite segment, Tidbits and Such, with Barrett.
Yo,
Mr. Dudley,
okay.
What are we talking today?
Okay. The first big tidbit here, and this will kind of be a good starter for our overall overarching conversation
Oh,
today,
sure, hon.
is that last week, in the hubbub and in the shocking release of all the Disney and everything that Disney owns, including Fox
Right.
and FX and everything under the sun, basically, we got really swept away by all that, and we trashed Netflix hard for not having anything good, despite having just gotten done reviewing and talking about how wonderful the Queen's Gambit was.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see that the Queen's Gambit is very high on my list here today. And
Uh-huh.
so, I went home.
You feel like a fool, don't you, Barrett?
I saw the people tweeting at us and getting in the Discord about what dum dums we were.
Uh-huh.
And then I looked and I was on there and like I'm watching the new season of Big Mouth and I finally got sucked in and I started The Crown. And so
Uh-oh.
Netflix is doing just fine.
We're
Um,
sorry.
but the big omission there was that we had literally just covered one of the best shows of the year in the Queen's Gambit. Now I still want to emphasize the sentiment though that like the difference is that Netflix has to keep pumping out really good content in those really unique ways. They have to keep like flipping the script with stuff like the Queen's Gambit or awesome, hilarious adults cartoons like Big Mouth. You know what I mean? Like they need home runs and it's got to be on Netflix. The Disney thing is so different because they have Disney Plus and they have ESPN and they have the entire library of 30 for 30 and they
Yeah.
have every single movie that Disney has ever made and they have Marvel and they have Star Wars. Oh yeah, and they have FX and Hulu as well and there's literally a never-ending supply. Like they will be hitting doubles and triples and home runs for as long as we'll be alive basically. And
Right.
like they just have such an overwhelming number of properties that it's no surprise that we got sucked up in all that and completely spaced on the fact that there was one good Netflix show that we covered just recently. But in the face of like 27 shows that have been announced that people are super stoked for, even if they're not necessarily shows that we're super stoked for, like
Yeah.
it was just it was it. I think that our big point kind of is still the same, which is that Netflix has to keep up basically, and they have to keep putting out stuff that's as good as the Queen's Gambit because they're gonna because the firepower over at Disney is just so much.
And I will save my specific Queen's Gambit takes for when we get to our lists here momentarily. But in terms of our omission, I think it speaks volumes to the overall sentiment about Netflix from the both of us. It's just like they're just like we've always said, they're throwing more shit at the wall than anyone else. And it's kind of easy to forget like some of my favorite shows are on Netflix. They're Netflix productions. But in the grand scheme of things and like yeah, this is the other piece of the puzzle too. Netflix does not really fuck with the hype game. They don't promote things a whole lot. Like we've always said, they just throw them out. They're out there. And then if they work word of mouth, boom, that's it. Social media, yada, yada. Like it's just kind of not the same game as like HBO putting out these high dollar premium productions that have a ton of marketing in front of them. You know about them years ahead of time and shit like that. Like it's just a totally different deal. So I don't know. No disrespect to Netflix, as you're going to see when we get to my top 10 as well. It's just like it's something about Netflix at this point that it's like it's almost the generic, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the Kleenex of fucking streaming. Like you're just gonna say it, but it's like I don't know if I really hold it in high esteem. Anyway,
Well,
no
and that's
disrespect, but also full disrespect meant.
I mean, you say that as a diss, but and it can be a negative, right? Like you do have to maintain your standing as that like as essentially the brand that started it all, so much so that some people even use your brand's name to refer to something much broader, like you mentioned Kleenex, Coke, Rollerblade, right? Like those are all actual brand names, not the things that we mean when we say those words now.
Right.
um but at the same time it's like you said last week, that's kind of your reason why you'll never give up Netflix, why it has its spot kind of locked in there for you,
Yeah, dude.
is because it's kind of the OG. It's going to have like maybe it doesn't have the biggest, shiniest stuff every season, but they're always going to be throwing something at the wall. They're always going to have something that kind of bubbles up word of mouth, whether that's a dumbass reality show like Too Hot to Handle, or whether it's something really phenomenal and kind of groundbreaking like The Queen's Gambit. So, their place is secure at the moment, but it will be interesting to see kind of what they do and kind of what changes they make
Right.
going forward, if any at all, to kind of keep up with HBO Max and all the Disney stuff and everything else that's will be competing for our eyeballs in 2021 and beyond.
But yes, Barrett, it is wild that we forgot to say.
Okay. My next little tidbit here is so I've talked a little bit about Dumois, the Instagram
Yeah.
account,
Yeah.
on some recent episodes, and it's going to be a nice little source of tidbits. I'm not going to start throwing out all the crazy rumors and like who slept with who and like
Sure.
who's hooked up with actors, because you can just go do that yourself on Dumois' Instagram. But there are some interesting things that kind of bubble up entertainment news wise. So
That are deserving of discussion.
Discussion. So one that stuck out to me was this. There's been some chatter recently about the Gossip Girl reboot, and some people that had auditioned like sent in, like some of the names of the characters that are coming up.
Okay.
And with that information, it was discovered that 6 or 7 of the kind of the now known / leaked characters have Instagram accounts. And so it's just kind of, I thought that was newsworthy and interesting. And I'm honestly surprised that I haven't heard of a TV show doing this before, but it makes total 1,000,000% sense. Gossip Girl is the perfect show to do this, where, we're used to a show like maybe Westworld or Game of Thrones, where the online culture of it all is very important to the watching and the viewing of the show.
Sure.
You want to read Ask the Maester. You want to go on Reddit and read about some theories, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That piece of the pie is significant to your viewing experience of just the flat out show. Well, now for a show like Gossip Girl, where there's some unknown but known narrator, and you're dealing with like the personal and social lives of all these people. Well, now those characters are even going to have Instagram accounts that you can go follow, and I bet that they will relate to the show and have even kind of like Watchmen did with the little website that you could go to get more and further information. Like this blending of the internet and now especially social media with a TV show is another kind of like interesting wrinkle to kind of look out for with some upcoming shows, and we'll see how that works out. We'll see how that does, but it's totally conceivable that becomes more and more normal.
I'm sure. Well, I mean, especially because the version of it that we've always seen is what you touched on a couple of times. Shows will often make websites to coincide with their shows, and they'll have cool little Easter eggs and fun little things the fans can do. They've always done that. It's a thing that's happened for a long time. What you haven't seen is shows take really good advantage of social media. And when a show like that, man, that is so ripe for content. And really think about it. The more you can extend the universe of your television show into the real world by making these characters do things in reality on these Instagrams. And what Barrett's speaking to is that the characters have Instagram accounts, meaning the fictional characters, not the actor or actress playing them. It's so that those characters can do things on Instagram that will obviously be a marketing tool for the show.
Yep.
A further way for the fans to interact with the characters. I mean, really a way for the fans to interact with the characters, period, not a further way. And then a way for the show to interact with the fans, which is just everybody wins. It's a very smart move.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But that's really, so that'll wrap it up kind of today for Tidbits, as I want to make sure we have got enough time to kind of cover this long list of shows that we've got today. But we'll be back. We'll be back next week with some more hot tidbits. Don't you worry about that.
Don't you worry, Such and Tid and Bits fans. Don't you worry. All right, let's talk about our favorite television shows of the year then, Barrett. I know that this is something you've been looking forward to. I got really excited about it after I finally made my list. And I really want to pay attention to how many things we mentioned that were Netflix shows, just to really hammer home how stupid we are when we talked about them so poorly last week. So Do you want to kind of start and do yours and just kind of take us through your thought process and everything, and then I'll respond and give you mine as we go?
Yeah, there are a couple things that I want to preface the list with, and they're kind of they'll speak to kind of larger things. I, I feel like this year, I'm not sure. Okay, first, it's obviously easy to one of the things that it's easy to do is compare this list to last year's list, which was kind of the first time that we've done this.
Yeah.
Um, and I felt like last year I had a better idea of what I wanted on my list. I felt like I looked at my list and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's these 10 shows. That's pretty easy. Now I just need to kind of sort and file them."
Right.
This year I thought that, I watched a ton of good stuff. And really there's an argument for stuff that I left off to be on here, and I just thought it was a little bit more difficult to kind of like narrow this down to 10 basically. And then at the
I,
same time, sorry, go ahead.
I felt the same way. I wanted to
Yeah.
get in there and say that was that was part of the difficult thing for me. I thought there were a lot that were sort of right there,
Mhm.
like on the cusp altogether. Like the back half of my list, a lot of them could have been interchanged with things that made my honorable mentions, just because it was not as like, oh, these are all standout. This is easy, and then there's a couple that maybe I have to argue 9 and 10 or whatever. This was like the last five were hard for me.
Right. Right. Yeah. And but I would also say that my list here this year, the top tier is broader. Like last year, my top tier was very easy. The two best shows of the
Right.
year for me were Succession and Watchmen, and it wasn't really that close,
Right.
right? And like I think you had Chernobyl up there as well, which was
Yeah.
phenomenal. But I think overall we could agree that like those two to three things were kind of superior to everything else. This year, it's really like my top four ish, really top five are really kind of like tier one, and then like tier two below that, where it was like you mentioned that bottom five, where it's kind of harder to decide.
Right.
Um, the other thing that I would say is, there were just more. Last year, we had shows like Chernobyl and Euphoria on there, and even in that kind of second to third tier, it felt like big properties. And I don't know if the lack of like getting to see people this year kind of cut down on that feeling, but outside of for me, outside of on my list, outside of the Queen's Gambit, there's not really anything here that I could talk to that I could talk to people to more than a few people about.
Right.
Very spread out, far more niche. Like, oh, maybe this friend's watching this and that one's watching this and my mom is watching this one. But like none of those, not a lot of those big kind of tent poles where it felt like even if you're not watching this, you know about it. You know about it. You know that people are talking about it. You know that it's out there and it's happening. And I don't know. It was just it's kind of a weird. I think that that's a symptom of the weird year and
I
not
think
being able
so.
to see people and go out and socialize as much.
I think so
We were just kind of all in our pods, just like enjoying what we were enjoying. But
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the year when it was like the thing that was most taken away from me on that front was that when we get to a dinner and everybody talks about their shows and that spreads that information, right? That's word
right,
of mouth recommendations that you're getting, and it's the most trusted way to find new content, new podcast, a new book, a new movie, a new TV show, right?
yep,
Directly from your friends, your closest friends. That being removed, like you said, I felt like everybody was just sort of finding and clicking and watching and binging and like just kind of more random. So all of us were less organized as squads, and therefore
yeah,
our lists are a little more scattered. I completely agree. There are only two or three of my 10. If you're really going to not like, if you don't count documentaries, for instance, two or three of my 10 shows that I could comfortably bring up in a setting with a few people and feel like they would even know what I was talking about.
right, right,
Be
yeah.
comfortable and feel like they would for sure know this show. So yeah, it was definitely a more scattered year on that front.
And then the final thing that I'll say here before I jump into my list is this was kind of something that happened to me um, in the last several months, I would say. But I don't consider myself like a much of a. I don't consider period pieces to be something that I like seek out.
Right.
I enjoy them. I like them. but I don't think about that as like one of my favorite genres, right?
Okay.
Not obsessed with period pieces. They don't jump right to the top of my list. But basically from the Queen's Gambit on, I realized how much I was enjoying anything that took me back to a non-modern time period. And again, another symptom of the
Yep.
year. But it's like, you know, I can't watch stuff like High Fidelity, for example, which is a great show that's on my list, and not think about what I'm missing, right?
Right.
Like I'm missing that social interaction with my friends. I'm missing walking into a record store or a clothing store and with no mask on and like you know, having a day and going out to a bar or a show at night and like, you know, you're
Ripping
just
off your clothes, rolling around on the ground, shitting yourself. Yeah, I know what you mean.
all of that. So anything that's modern was almost like a reminder of what we can't do
Right.
anymore.
Right.
And then just on top of that, there was like, you know, I probably looked at my phone more than I ever have this year, and I hate that. And you watch shit like the Social Dilemma on Netflix, and so that was another piece of it. Getting to a period where there was none of that just felt really really refreshing. One more thing to add here: how disastrous the political climate is in the country at this point. Now,
Right.
I realize that there's always been strife and there's always been protests and there's always been something that people were upset about, but by and large, I think that everybody agrees that it's never been quite like this.
We're more divided, it seems. Yeah.
And so watching that stuff play out, whether it was like all the way back to the 17 or 1800s, or even just like the stuff that I really, really loved was taking place in the 1950s and 60s. I was just so drawn to that, to anything that took me to yesteryear, basically to a time period of long ago. And so for that same reason, you know, like I just mentioned, I've just started The Crown, not on my list because I'm nowhere close to season 4 yet, but I'm loving. It's another one that takes place right there in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, and I'm really really enjoying just everything from the style to the decoration to the lack of technology, and that is a minor theme of my list here.
That's another thing, Barrett, is it's, my life has always been hell. So I've always enjoyed period pieces for that very reason, because they take you from the here and now
Yeah.
into another place. Okay. Do you want to start by going through some of our honorable mentions that didn't make it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because that way the list is more like, okay, then what did make it?
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying?
Oh yeah.
I'm just gonna throw some of mine out that I have reasons for
Okay.
not being on my top 10.
All right.
One is The Mandalorian. It's because I'm not done, and that doesn't seem fair. I am very confident that it may shake its way into the bottom 3. It's just going to depend, man. I'm only 4 in, and I got to get to that ending. I obviously know kind of how it goes. I'm very excited about it. It seems like it's executed very well based on the response from the populace, general populace. But I got to watch it before I can put it on my list. It's just not there. Another one that I did not put on here that I feel like weird about is Curb Your Enthusiasm. And I don't know if it's because it's 10 seasons, it's been going so long. It feels like putting The Simpsons on my list or something at this point. Or if it's that Curb is just a comedy and it's this 20-minute little deal. It's like, I don't feel the same. Like, it doesn't feel right putting that up against things that are an hour long and dramatic. And I don't know. I love Curb. Everybody knows how I feel about Larry David. I wear the man's face on a giant t-shirt a few times a month. So didn't make my list, but something that I really enjoyed. Space Force was a good show that I watched this year that I feel like deserves to be on this list because it looks dumb as shit and like one of those things that nobody would ever watch, but it was enjoyable and I just liked it. It's not something that I considered in my top 10. It didn't fight with any of my top 10 for a slot, but something that was worth mentioning. Um, and then I also wanted to I guess my 2 most shocking honorable mentions, 3 really, are The Outsider. Did not make my top 10.
Okay.
Very enjoyable, but just all said and done, looking back on it, picking from HBO's catalog this year,
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't my one. And Lovecraft Country, same kind of reason. It's like I really, what it came down to, Barrett, is like there were shows that were higher quality, perhaps, than other shows that ended up on my top 10. but my enjoyment and entertainment factor was higher with the ones that ended up on my list.
Yeah, and just to speak right there to the two that you just mentioned, The Outsider and Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
There is only one show on my list that had an episode I didn't love.
Okay. So if they had
Every other show on
middle,
my list, like straight through, I
right.
loved every episode. And with both The Outsider and Lovecraft Country, I thought that they had, for Outsider, it dragged in those mid-late episodes a little bit. And I felt like we could have done without them. It was definitely one where I that probably should have been 6 or 8 episodes instead of 10. And then for Lovecraft Country, I just thought, it, again, all credit to a show that strove to be that ambitious,
Right.
but cramming so much in just kind of let some episodes down more than it did. And to that point, it made the highs really high for that show.
It did.
But it was a little bit too much of a roller coaster ride for me to include on my top 10.
And one other one I'll throw out there that I feel like it's a seasonal deal, and it's something that I don't really consider eligible to make my top 10, but I really enjoyed it and want to give it some props, is The Haunting of Bly Manor. That was really well done. That was a very enjoyable season of television. Very cool story. I, I was surprised. It was one of the more surprising successes of the year for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to give it some respect, but again, not on my top 10, and that's it for my honorable mentions. Is there anything you want to throw out?
So I'll mention a couple more things. My list is pretty 30 minute episode, half hour episode heavy.
Ooh,
and
not
so
shocking.
yeah. And that doesn't mean that they're all comedies. Don't get it twisted. But so a little bit because of that, but also because the second season didn't quite live up to the first. Pen 15 is an honorable mention for me.
Ooh, I still need to get there.
Still really, really enjoyed the show, but it was also one that really, really like cracked last year because it was so novel to have Anna Konkle and Maya Erskine playing their seventh grade selves as 30-year-olds was just like kind of it was
a wild move, yeah,
very novel, and now I've seen it, so I wasn't so novel anymore. Still a great show. Let's see, what else do I have? Let's see on here. Shouts to Dark, just a really fun ride. Didn't make my list. Dead to Me on a Netflix show. It had a really great second season, one that I thought was much better than the first. You mentioned Lovecraft Country. You mentioned The Haunting of Bly Manor. The Boys, not on my list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very, very close. I'm gonna give you. I probably have 3 that just missed my list that are. I bet they're all on yours.
Okay.
And we can use this to jump right in. But
let's do it.
The Boys.
Yep.
Debs.
Yep.
And 000.
Yep, but also Dark.
Oh yeah, Dark
4.
Too.
So 4. Those 4 all on my list. Good. Yeah, you know me pretty well.
They essentially, it's hard to explain why they got bumped in favor of some other stuff. But I think what it comes down to is that the bottom have there are a few shows that I have here that I'll mention that are all pretty good hangs, pretty feel good shows.
Sure.
And they just usurped something like 000, which I thought was phenomenal, but wasn't the easiest watch for me.
Sure, totally fair. Let me start by giving you my 10, 9, 8. How about that? Because here's
let's
the
start
thing.
there.
I cheated with my number 10. I threw 3 documentaries into the 10 slot, all right? Because I don't think documentaries should count, but this was the year of the documentary in terms of everybody watching them. Not necessarily, we all know that this sort of era of docs kicked off before 2020, but because we were all stuck in our houses, it caught fire. Tiger King, of course, being the biggest one. And of course, that being a Netflix property. Tiger King was amazing. The Last Dance, also a Netflix property. Amazing. Loved it. Finally got through it. I am a huge basketball fan, man. So that was like an easy win for me. Obviously, it was crazy that I didn't watch it when it was live with everybody else, but I had a lot going on in my life at that point. And The Vow, Keith Raniere, that dude is stuck in my head forever and ever. So my number 10 is those 3 documentaries. My number 9 are 2 of the shows, or is one of the shows you just mentioned, is Dark. and Dark is toward the bottom out of respect for Dark. I don't know what happened. I never will. I loved it, and it was very hard on my brain. So I had to get it in there, but it's in the 9 slot. And then my 8 is 000. I really liked it. This is one that fought for slot position in terms of the 8, 9, 10 slot where it was going to be. It's one that I battled with like Lovecraft Country and The Outsider to maybe be off the list instead of one of those. But at the end of the day, I really, really liked it. It was different than anything else I watched in the way it was done, and it was different. It was a new spin on that drug crime world that I'm obsessed with. So that's my 10, 9, 8. Docs, then Dark, and 000 at the 8 spot.
Okay. So for me, my number 10 is The Mandalorian, which came just short on your list. This is
and only because I haven't finished it.
Right.
Again.
And this is the show where there was one episode. It's that second episode that I thought was kind of a whiff, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
But beyond that episode, I thought that this show was deserving of credit and a place on this list because to me it took a step up.
Right.
And we talked about that in our coverage of it
over the
last couple of weeks, but it was kind of an unexpected step up. And for it to be able to kind of like walk the line between the kind of adventure of the week and then having this like much serious, much darker, much more meaningful storyline between Mando and the child that really developed into like a true father-son type thing this year. It was just really stunning to watch in those last few episodes. The first one with Timothy Oliphant and the sandworm, just absolutely incredible way to bring you back into the world. And then the last few where we get some of the characters that people are familiar with, and we get some real major plot developments and storyline.
Huge moments.
Not to mention Pedro Pascal's beautiful mug on our screens. It was enough to get it to this list.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest shows of the year, no matter how you shake it. Like my mom bought my girlfriend's little baby girl a Grogu doll for Christmas, as an example. She didn't know what to make of it, by the way, but she did buy her one. So yeah, the Mandalorian's deserving, man. I can't wait to finish it. It's a great show. They really did take a step up this year.
There's probably like a YouTube video that she can watch that's just like a supercut of all of the cute baby Mando moments. I'm sorry, baby Yoda moments, and then
that's baby moments. Appropriate. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then she'll be obsessed, just like we all are.
Yeah.
My number 9 was The Plot Against America HBO miniseries.
Okay. You spoke very highly of this.
Yeah, it feels like so long ago, but again, it was one that took me to that kind of, early 20th century time period, but in a not so fun way. But I just remember I was so struck by this show and so kind of impressed with how it took an alternate reality, essentially, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do, and made it really hum because of its like kind of parallels to our own modern environment.
Right.
That it just was it stuck with me and it snuck here on this list. This is one that like again, like I don't think many people watch this show, man, but it just really left its impact on me. Okay, and my number 8 is Dave.
Dave at the 8 slot. All right.
In the 8 slot. Do you want to wait to talk about Dave?
No, let's just talk about it now. Dave's in my 2 hole though.
Okay.
Dave's in my 2 hole.
That's the proper place for Dave, I'd say, is in the 2 hole.
Yes, I agree. Look, man.
2 hole of a floppy rubber doll, no less.
This show had too many things about it that we could sit here and bring up, like the floppy rubber doll, the milking table. There were moments that were so funny that I was laughing to the point that I was tearing up. There were moments that were very sad and serious. It was reflective. It was ambitious. It was deep. I thought that it was another big surprise of this year. Like, look, we all love Lil Dicky. He's a funny ass rapper, but this show was a bigger deal than his rap career has been so far. He has had hits. Don't get me wrong.
That is fair. That is a fair statement.
but this was a massive success critically. I'm not sure how it did commercially, but it was one of the best things I watched this year. It ended up my second favorite thing on television that I watched in all of 2020. And I obviously love rap. I'm obviously a white dude. And the way all that, and I obviously have mental health issues that I battle. And so all those things kind of tied together in that, again, sort of like a layup for them, but for Comedy Central, right? Comedy Central?
FX.
FX, excuse me. God, I'm just trying to credit. Those two sometimes still, I think, are the same thing in my head, and they're not. Like Comedy Central and FX are like in the exact same slot. I don't know why.
Well, they do.
In my silly brain.
So there are. That's actually not surprising because there are so many kind of connections. There's stuff that was FX, like Always Sunny, that I think now gets rerun on Comedy Central.
Okay.
And FX does have stuff that, Archer, Always Sunny, like Dave, that like very easily could be Comedy Central
Central or Adult Swim. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So give me your Dave takes.
Again, I look at my list here, and it might be the most unique show. That's might
one of the reasons it was so high for me. Yeah.
It might be the one that I could call the most novel. And it did that to great effect. I was really surprised with how deep it did get in the back half. And I thought that was important to the show, because without it, I think this is it's probably a little too slapstick and would still be funny. But the fact that they deal with those real human issues like you're talking about, and then especially with the storyline there of dealing with the relationship and a career that requires a strange devotion and a persona on top of that. I thought was really, really fascinating.
No, it tackled race, it tackled the relationship thing, it tackled career stuff, it tackled friendship, mental health issues. It delved into a lot of different places you did not expect the show with the floppy thing in the milking table to have. And that was what made it so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right.
It was a great show, man.
Yeah, it was really good. I cannot wait to see what they come back with for season 2 on Dave.
So you're 10, 9, 8 again, one more time, sir.
From 10, 10, The Mandalorian, 9, The Plot Against America, 8, Dave.
Right on. Okay, I'll give you my 7, 6, 5, Barrett.
Let's do 7, 6. Let's do 7, 6.
Okay, 7, 6.
And then we'll talk top 5.
My number 7, top 5. My number 7 is The Queen's Gambit. Okay. And I understand that for a lot of people, this show is perhaps higher in their top 10, if not one of their top 3. And I completely respect that. It's just that for me, The Queen's Gambit is one of those ones that's on my list because it was so enjoyable and it got me out of my head and it took me to this place, and it was really well done. Don't get me wrong. It just, like, looking back at it, it didn't have the most to say. So it was more just the fun story and ride. And not to take anything away from it, we need these shows too. That's why it's on my top 10.
Yeah.
It just, for me, what you obviously will notice as we go through these, look, the deeper, darker stuff and the stuff that delves into big issues and problems and that gets you to really examine your life and shit, like, that's the stuff I really, really love. And no disrespect to Queen's Gambit. Great show. Great show. Huge win for Netflix. Very disrespectful that we forgot about it last week. Deservedly on my list, just a little bit further down than I think some people might have thought. So that's my number 7.
Yeah. My number 7 is Ted Lasso.
I knew it was going to be on yours. I was curious as to where.
So here's what I'll say about Ted Lasso, and beyond like it's the quirky hijinks and how funny this show is. And I can't remember if I've said this on the podcast or not. Maybe I have, but it's worth reiterating. This show, as a lighthearted 30-minute comedy, challenged everything that I had learned about TV over the last 5 years. It flipped the script, and it literally turned me on my head watching it, because and that is why it went from being like not only just like heartwarming and good-natured, which was perfect and something that we all needed in this year, but that's why it's on it's all the way up to number 7 on my list, is because of kind of what it said about the modern landscape of television. But this show, which was like, I would say in between PG-13 and R, there's some cursing and there's some sex and stuff like that, but it wasn't, nasty by any means. It was very, very warm. And it was on Apple TV. And just at every turn, when a new character would get introduced or a new plot line would develop, I was just expecting the worst. I was like, oh, this new friend that came in. Oh, this is bad. This is bad for Ted, man. This is bad. Oh, the soccer manager, the owner, this is gonna be real bad. This is gonna be bad. And just like every step of the way, I was waiting for that other shoe to drop, for something to get really dark, for something awful to happen. And instead, it zagged so hard. It always went the other way. That new character was just a nice person. This relationship is going to get fixed. This this person is going to forgive this other person because that's what normal people in the real world that are good-hearted do.
Right.
And
this year really fucked up your head.
We're so trained based on these TV shows that we watch.
Yeah.
We're just ready for somebody to get stabbed in the back, literally or metaphorically.
Exactly. No, and that's very fair, man. Most of the shows on my list, like, they introduce a new character, and you're like, this person's either going to kill one of my existing characters or get killed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the fact that this show was like kind of like rewired those synapses in your brain to stop expecting people to do bad shit was really, really nice.
And really, at this point in television, with the access and the amount of streaming services and the amount of premiere TV that's out there, prestige TV, whatever, you need that. And that's what makes a great show, is when you're watching and you start to try to guess what's going to happen, right? And then you're wrong or you can't, because the show goes another way or does something different or changes things up. And I'm excited eventually to get to Ted Lasso, based on how highly you and my mother have both spoken of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And lots of people in the Clam fam as well. Shouts to y'all.
Okay, what's your 6?
My 6 is the Third Day on HBO.
Okay. Not one I didn't get to. It
was a weird one. It was just captivating to me, man. There's very little lightheartedness or joking in it. Not an easy watch in terms of 2020, but it kind of took place in this fantastical environment it was real world, but enough removed to for you to know, like, kind of take the weight away from it, I guess, to not make it quite so heavy. And it was just really cool and original the way they did it. It was shot beautifully. The cinematography and the effects they used to capture this sort of magical nature of this island that you're on were incredible. And it was just all the way through very enjoyable. It was shorter in terms of length. I think it was only 6 episodes,
right?
Little mini series, right? And it got our boy Jude Law in there, and pretty much anytime you can get him doing something good that's not Pope related, I'm on board.
Now, did you go back and watch the 24-hour live stream to complete the experience?
I haven't, and maybe someone would argue that makes it not fair that I put it on this list. But look, I didn't catch the live stream live, so I refuse to take part in it at this point.
Right. Well, that's the thing about a live stream.
You got to be there live.
Yeah.
Live. What's your number 6?
My number 6 is High Fidelity. This was all the way up at number 2 on my top 5 halfway. So a lot of stuff slid in here above it. But it probably doesn't quite deserve to be in the top 5, because, like you said, it's one of these shows that, like, it talks about relationships and what it's like to be young and single and living in the city, but it didn't have any really bigger message than that. Not that TV shows have to say something profound, but it was what I'll say for it is that it was my favorite hang on this entire list. It was the show that I most wanted to just, like, go home, sit down, and hang out with these characters who were themselves just hanging out in a record shop.
Right.
And Zoe Kravitz, a really, really, I thought, kind of, if not star making, really just like proof in the pudding that she has a lot of range and can carry something on her own. And
so is she significantly different than Big Little Lies, Zoe Kravitz?
Oh my God, yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to me, because I've only ever seen her in that.
Right. No, totally different.
Okay.
And there's an episode here. there's one episode in particular which is probably like one of my top 5 episodes of the year. It's not all the way to being a bottle episode, but it does revolve around like one kind of specific, only one thing is happening.
Okay.
So we kind of don't bounce around to the other characters. And it was just really kind of fascinating. And it revolves around a guy's record collection, and kind of spins off into commentary about how
No pun intended.
yeah, about how really about, I don't want to say like all outright feminism, but it's more about how like women aren't respected in certain circles.
Okay.
When they obviously should be. And just kind of like that episode kind of sealed it for me as a really phenomenal show. And man, RIP and peace to this one. It's really, really devastating that this one is kaput.
Yeah, it's one, especially, being that high on your list. Anything that you feel has a ton of potential to go long, to see it cut down by a historical event, basically in the form of this international pandemic, is unfortunate. And that's, again, Barrett and I have spoken about this a lot. This thing, the environment, COVID, all this, that's playing a massive role in what we get and when we get it and what shows are continuing to go forward versus not. And it's changing the way studios are looking at their budgets. And this was High Fidelity was an example of one of the casualties of this thing. Now, other reasons probably too involved, but shame they couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, it is.
Let's get into our top 5, Barrett.
Okay.
Maybe it'll cheer you up.
It will and it won't.
Okay, good. I'll start with my number 5, which is where Devs slid in.
Okay.
It was look, we spent a lot of time talking about this show on our podcast, and it was one that for that reason probably got more respect than some of the others. I just liked what they were able to do. And I liked especially the way they were able to wrap it up and sort of end it without me needing anything else. I didn't feel like I wanted more from the show than it gave me. And visually, it was obviously pretty stunning, very cool. It was one of the cooler shows. Like week to week, I knew each episode that I watched was going to be very cool.
So I thought Devs was really incredible on every, every line item that you had there. It excelled. It was amazing visually. It was super weird. The whole, just like watching an entire show that was almost completely about like determinism,
right,
and free will, and how you could potentially manipulate that, the multiverse, the whole thing was phenomenal. Let's talk about the score for 2 seconds.
Yeah, man.
I mean,
yeah,
really incredible stuff there that they did with sound, and with just the overall kind of like sensory experience.
Yes.
Totally like I said, it almost made my list. When it comes down to it for me, we talk about like what these shows talk about, what they look like, what's their message. This is acting at the end of the day, though.
Yeah.
And for me, performances are weighted as much, if not more than this other stuff that we're talking about.
These damn kids ruined it for you.
And I could not quite get past the performances from our lead and the
I'm pulling them up right now. I got you.
Jamie
back.
and Jamie.
Right, so Lily Chan and Jamie, who were played by
Lily
Sonia
and Jamie
and Jin Ha.
I thought that those performances were okay, but not great.
Yeah, they took you out of it. I remember it was week to week. We were trying to dodge basically bad bombshells from Lily Chan and Jamie because you were not into those characters. I totally understand that. Like I said when we discussed it,
Allison Pill and Nick Offerman were incredible. As were the two.
Stuart was awesome as well,
and the Stuart's friend, the young one.
Yeah, I can't remember what.
I mean that whole episode where she gets her to
Lyndon,
where she gets Lyndon might have been a God, I'm probably putting my foot in my mouth here. Lyndon was potentially like non-binary or
right. We
or
didn't
a
know
guy. Actually,
what
I think
specifically.
Lyndon was a guy, but the actor is a girl, I believe, or
There was
potentially
something like that.
non-binary. Yeah.
Yeah, there was something like that in
But
there.
that whole episode and scene where Allison Pill's character essentially gets Lyndon to kill themselves was wild. I mean,
Yeah,
really incredible stuff.
it was impactful, man. And the
So
things you spoke to that it played with,
it
all that
had good
determinism
performances.
and
It
fate.
had good performances. I just thought two of the most important ones were a little lacking.
Yeah, yeah. And I was able to overlook those. So anyway, that one Dev's at my 5 slot for all those reasons. Great show.
Okay, so my number 5, kind of like you with your number 10, I'm cheating here a little bit
Okay.
because this show is technically a 2019 show,
Okay.
but it for 2018 and 19 for seasons 2 and 3, it released in December, and that's a really weird time for a show to release, especially for these year-end lists.
Right.
And I waited almost a whole year to even begin watching the third season of this show, but I just wrapped it up over the holidays, and it was a total return to form. And it's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Uh,
Okay.
Incredible season 3. They really season 2 I felt was kind of trying to live up to season 1 a little bit,
Right.
and it just kind of bit off more than it could chew. It tried to get too cute, tried to take you to too many unique places. This one was back to just like, let's focus on the comedy, let's focus on these amazing characters that we've built, and let's just do what we know how to do, and that's make a really really fun but also really really kind of like emotional show dealing with, when it comes down to it, family. um and we're dealing with family, and we're also dealing with the with Midge Maisel's pursuit of a career in comedy, which was essentially, not unprecedented at that point, but the way that she was doing it was certainly unique and different. She wasn't playing a character on stage, and the kind of her predecessors were kind of caricatures on
Right.
stage. She's just herself talking about herself, and they kind of they shortened it a little bit. This season was 8 episodes instead of 10, which is always worrisome, kind of, like you're like, you say, hey, why do you do that, why? And
Well,
this
now
was
you only got 8 episodes for me now?
yeah, opposite of The Outsider. Like I desperately wanted 10 here. At the same time, I think part of the reason that this season was a return to form and was so great is because not a moment, not an episode went wasted. Like it constantly moving, constantly funny, constantly just excellent, just absolutely excellent. And the show that it bumps out of the top 5 for me, High Fidelity, which I called the best hang,
Right.
Maisel was really really close. Like it to being as fun of a hang. It's just got even more to say and do and comment on, and it has even more characters that I love. And it's just it's great. I'm very happy that this show, not a its 4th season was a casualty of the pandemic. It obviously would have returned this year, but they are getting back to filming early January. Rachel Brosnahan, who plays the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, posted some Instagrams from her fittings, from her first fittings.
Ooh.
So it is coming back. But in an interview, the creator Amy Sherman Palladino has talked about how the pandemic could affect the length of this show overall, the number of seasons that it gets. And so we're High Fidelity will not be the last sad casualty, because even if these shows are able to come back, there's ones where the creators are just talking about how, like, man, my show requires movement, it requires closeness, it requires being in various places, and it's just, these are things that they're going to have to see how they go, right?
Yeah.
They're going to see if they can pull it off with all these crazy production restrictions and parameters, and not to mention all these shows are getting more expensive because of the added risk and the added insurance and the added security and all the testing and all the, just all the PPE and just like everything in between that is now required to like add a layer of safety to these shows.
Right.
It is going to end some shows early, and it's going to kill some shows, or in their prime as well. And so
And delay some and take longer for some. Yeah, it's
I
just
hope
gonna
that
be
this is
weird.
one that is able to be successful despite it, the new new hangups and the new obstacles that it will incur, because it's really, really just to use the word, it's marvelous.
Marvelous, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Okay, I'll give you my 4 and my 3 here.
Okay.
Ozark slid in at my number 4 spot. All right, Ozark season what 4, 3, I think it was 3. And look, this is a show that again, it's one that it was. I would almost compare it to The Mandalorian in that I expect it to be a little basic. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's not Breaking Bad. Okay, it's like Breaking Bad light,
right,
or something like that. But the show continues to find ways to elevate itself and get darker and get more serious and sort of continue to develop the situation in a way that man, look, I love Jason Bateman, and at this point I love really all the characters on the show. They all do a really good job, and all the actors that play them. I think the writers have done a good job of keeping it fresh, and this particular season this year just kind of like it just hit for me. It was entertaining, and it was also very high intensity, so that I was locked in. And Ozark slid in at the number 4 for that reason. 3 for me is one that didn't make your list, and it's The Boys to get into my top 3. I'm really looking forward. I mean, I guess I want to hear more of your reasoning for what it was that got The Boys to sort of slide for you. And then I'll respond to that if that's okay with you.
Yeah. I think that the first thing that I would say is that it's going to always be really hard for a superhero show to crack my top 10.
Yeah. I think it's just that this one's so different with the anti-hero nature of it and that sort of everything they're playing with there that I don't necessarily care, because I'm not a superhero guy, just like you're not really, right? Unless it's Batman, I'm sort of like, whatever. I'm not getting into the next Wonder Woman thing, which, by the way, it sounds like it's not going particularly well.
I've heard that it's not great.
People are making a lot of fun of it, which is very unfortunate. But it is what it is. It happens. Anyway, I'm not a superhero guy.
Why do these people... Why Hollywood? Come on, man. I know you guys are all big listeners. Every major player in Hollywood listens to this show. They're waiting on pins and needles for this particular episode.
Yes.
Just stop making your movies 2.5 hours. They do not all deserve 150 minutes, man.
Yeah, you guys would save a lot of money this way, too. We're trying to help you out. Like times are tough. Shave 25 mil off there.
A 2-hour movie is a great length for almost every movie that's not some crazy, like super intense, wild, auteur vision that needs longer. Wonder Woman 2, a sequel of a superhero movie, does not need to be 2.5 hours long. I promise you.
I think I may be doing my cheat. Nope. Wait. Season 2 finished September. Okay, so never mind. Was this season 2 of The Boys, right?
Yes.
That I watched?
Yep.
And was that technically 2019, maybe?
No. That was earlier this year, man. It was like Labor Day.
Okay, I thought so too. Yeah. All right, so yeah, anyway, The Boys lands on my list, man. Look, it wasn't I wouldn't say the show took massive leaps forward or anything. It kind of stayed in its lane as far as how much I enjoy it. But last season 1 was good enough, and season 2 was enough fun.
I did think that this season was better than the first. Yeah, it really does boil down to the superhero thing. You got people that can do all sorts of incredible stuff that doesn't exist. I don't know. It's man. It's
I would argue
it's hard to kind of frame up, but even like some of the superhero movies that have done similar things, whether that's like Deadpool or Guardians of the Galaxy to a lesser extent.
What was that Will Smith one?
The old one? Oh no, wait, Suicide Squad?
Nah, he flew around like drunk.
Hancock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hancock.
Yeah, I don't know. There was just something about this show that, like I said, it was an honorable mention for me, but I don't know what it would have to do to crack this list.
It's a Barrett bias. You have a Barrett bias.
It really is. It's a hang up that I have with putting a show with that revolves around superheroes on here.
Yeah, it's personal preference, baby.
Yeah.
Do your thing. My number, you already know my number 2 is Dave, so I only have my number 1 left.
Okay.
So feel free to rattle off your 4, 3, 2.
That means that we're gonna have the same number 1 then, which I'm pretty excited about. So let
Yes.
me talk 3 and 4 from me real quick.
Okay.
3 and 4 is where I slotted the most gutting shows that I watched this year. They were both absolutely phenomenal,
Mm.
and they were both wrecking balls as far as what they did to you while watching. And at number 4, I have Normal People, and at number
Okay.
3, I have I May Destroy You.
Both
So
very highly lauded this year.
so Normal People was centered around 2 incredible performances from 2 young new actors. And it is essentially all about their relationship over many years, which they just cannot figure out. So that's the first thing, is that you constantly are rooting for these 2 people to figure it out, and they either can't or they won't, and it's maddening, but it is also devastating because of the various things that they go through and that they see and that they experience and the other relationships that they deal with in their lives. And it's just it's so, man, it's just so real. And it was just highly impactful to watch. And I don't really have a lot to add other than amazing performances that made you feel every word that they said and every moment that they went through.
Here's how I know it was really, really good, because in a year where you were all about trying to get your mind out of
Yep.
reality, this one still got into your top 4.
Yeah, it did.
I think Daisy Edgar Jones and Paul
Paul
Mescal are
Mescal.
the
Yes,
2 new actors that you're referring to as sort of
correct.
making this a powerhouse performance from both of them.
Yes.
It's one I heard a lot about and one I'm interested in, but one that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna save this for like 2021.
That's probably smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just really high octane performances from those 2, and this show doesn't work without them. I May Destroy You. This is from Michaela Cole. It's totally her vision. It's totally her story. She's the star. She wrote it, and again, the Normal People has a lot of notes and things that you and I will relate to, right? Where
Right.
we can see ourselves in both characters at various points.
Sure.
And the experience that they go through is more akin to things that we may have been through ourselves. I May Destroy You, not so much. Takes place in the UK. The leads are black, and the foremost story here is about sexual assault. And Michaela Cole takes it on in a way that I don't think anybody understood or realized was possible, and that's head on. She just talks about it, and she talks, and this show talks about every nuance that there is revolving around it. It goes into gray areas that you didn't think were even were touchable for a TV show, and it does them with aplomb. And man, it makes you think every step of the way. It really, really, it's so lived in. It's so real. It tackles stuff on with social media as well. It tackles stuff with family. It tackles stuff with your friends and how you support them or don't support them. And then on top of all that, like I just said, like it man, it talks a lot about sexual assault in just a really, really, really incredibly powerful way. And I think this was at the top of a lot of lists this year.
It was.
And I like I said about performances being worth as much as messaging in shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know me, you see my list. Enjoyability is also up there. So
Sure.
the two shows that I have above this were just flat out more enjoyable. And so I'm giving my brain a break.
Sure.
It's a cop out if you want to call it that. But I'm just choosing here in my top 4. And really, like I said, this top 5 from with Maisel, Normal People, I May Destroy You, and then the top 2, this is tier 1 television for me.
All
It's
interchangeable
all
arguments
pretty
could be
it's
made
all
for all of
pretty
them.
interchangeable, but just for my list, I slotted these
Sure.
2 shows that were a little bit harder to watch, that I kind of had to like gear myself up for a little bit. I slotted them a little bit lower than my top 2, which were shows that I just did not want to stop watching.
That is completely fair, in my opinion.
But
This is another one I May Destroy You before we move away from it that I do look forward to watching at some point, just off of the sort of little synopsis alone,
So
it's one of those ones you read and you go, "Oh, well, shit,
yeah,
that's gonna be interesting."
and a lot like Dave, which I said was maybe the most unique show on this list. This one's up there too, but it's the content of Dave was unique. The content here is not unique. The struggle
The
with race,
angle and the way they go at it.
the struggle with race and sexual assault and your friends and your family and the torture that social media can bring, like those are not novel things, right?
Right, very discussed.
Like a white guy trying to break into rap can be unique and weird with his
Sure.
friend being the manager and like all that shit. But yes, the approach here and the vision and the way that she is able to talk about it and show these different characters and kind of like each going through something different and even when it's the same thing, kind of just how it's different for a black female and a black gay man, right? Like
Right.
it's so she wasn't afraid to go anywhere, and it's such an amazing show because of that. And so if you haven't watched it, it's normal people. It's a little hard for me to recommend unless you really want to see two incredible performances, because
Just a beating.
it's just such a beating.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more hope in I May Destroy You,
Okay.
even though the subject matter is probably a little bit darker and more significant.
Well, it is
Um,
that's one of the things that'll stand out to you is that it's a British comedy drama television series, and then it focuses on this
yeah, there
horrifying action, right?
there are
So that's
funny
what makes it
moments in
so
I May
interesting.
Destroy You. There's not that many funny moments in Normal People.
It's a comedy drama, and that's
Yeah,
something that, like, when you can mix those two successfully, I'm in, man. I'm in.
yeah. So just a quick mention for my number two before we talk about our number one here. My number
Yeah.
two is The Queen's Gambit.
Okay.
I talked up top about how much I love just being in that world in the 1950s and 1960s. I was when they go to Mexico City and Las Vegas, and you get to see those two locations as they may have been in the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah.
I was like, you'd think I'd like done some Molly or something. I was just so joyous in those moments, watching those places. And then on top of that, to have Anya Taylor-Joy, whose performance was probably my favorite here. I
It's one of
think
my favorites to be sure from this year.
she was just a tidal wave, man. And it's not a gaudy performance at all. It's really
No.
subtle. It's a lot of emotion in the eyes and in the face and
Her body movement,
her
her
body
body
language.
language is
Yes,
very
dude.
powerful, man.
And then man, this is you guys know that I'm not really much of a binge watcher. And I could have watched 7 episodes straight. I could have taken a Saturday and watched 7 hours of this television show. And to tell this story and to talk about, like, to talk about this prodigy who dealt with struggles from an early age, whether that was addiction or relationship to her mother. It was just really something, man. It was such a treat, and it was such a surprise too. On
It really
top of
came
all
out of nowhere,
on
yeah.
top of all that, it made chess sexy again, which we've something that we've all been begging for. I don't know how many times you and I were just like talking about that last year. Like, God, why isn't there a show about chess and about sexy chess in particular?
Yes,
And Netflix, man, shouts to them. They heard our cries for that
they did.
and they made
They
it
really
happen.
listened. They really listened. I saw an
Uh,
article yesterday about how
About
the
chess's
pandemics
popularity.
the pandemic boosted the popularity of Queen's Gambit because chess was something that was
Mm,
able to be more accessible to everybody in the world right now looking for shit to do at home with each other. So, which is an obvious, sort of obvious association, but it was just interesting to me that not only people are still writing about Queen's Gambit, but that they're writing about why it was so successful this year.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting
I,
stuff.
I
And to
saw.
your point also, Barrett, sorry, one more thing. The only other deal, not a lot of my shows on my top 10 are bingeable, like you said. And if you're not counting the documentaries that I cheated with number 10, not a lot of bingeable stuff here. Queen's Gambit, very bingeable. Dave, bingeable.
Yep.
Our number one, you could argue probably two, but Queen's Gambit, man, that was one for certain that I wanted the next episode to start right when the prior ended. I got through it in a
Right.
few days. It was an incredible show. It was one of the few things this year to capture everyone's attention.
Yeah, and I'm giving it some credit for that as well. Definitely.
I am as well. It's one of the reasons I honestly had it down like number 9 right before my number 10 documentary cheating slot. And I was like, nah, sorry. It gets more credit than 000 and Dark because it got everybody in the same place. And that was
Yep.
something we needed this year. So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
Queen's Gambit,
Totally.
a lot of respect.
Okay, so number 1, it's The Great, right?
Yeah, I didn't think both of us would end up with this as our number 1. And it's one that it wasn't like entirely obvious to me when I sat down and made my list. But by the end of me, I was like, when I was looking at everything I watched, I was like, well, this is my stand. It's like, it's not really that hard to make this decision. It was The Great. It was great. It was a great show. It was a period piece, like you said.
Yep.
Got us out of the here and now. It was both horrifying and hysterical at different points.
Yeah.
It got me to like one of the more heinous male pieces of shit to be ever put on screen in the form of Peter. And it was
Yeah.
just amazing. It had every character brought something to the table that made the show more fun and interesting. And it was just episode by episode. It was the one that there was no lull. It was the musical album that I don't have to skip a track. You know what I mean? It was
Right.
like The Great was that this year. It was great, and it got the number 1 slot easy for me. But tell us about why you loved it.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of spoken to it. No show had I'm like Stefan on SNL. This show had everything basically.
Yeah.
It was laugh out loud funny in moments. It was very meaningful, about like whether you want to talk about power or you want to talk about female rights or kind of paradigm shift change in culture as far as like arts and writing and
Science
what
and
that looked like.
medicine.
And it was scary at times. Like I was tense, I was nervous for my characters.
Yeah.
And it was dramatic. I mean, like it was just kind of it had all of that. So, I talked about like how the roller coaster ride of Lovecraft Country with its ups and downs. Well, this was a roller coaster ride in a good way, where it just was like it had me laughing and crying and nervous and then back to laughing, like all in the same episode. Not to mention over the course of the season. Um, as we get to the top of this list, I've begun mentioning performances more and more, whether that's Anya Taylor-Joy in Queen's Gambit, or Michaela Cole and I May Destroy You, or Daisy, Paul Mescal and Brit. What's the other one from Normal People?
Daisy Stoney Coopertown. I'm thinking. I'm
Jones.
pulling it up
It's
right now.
Jones. Last name is Jones.
That'd be old Daisy Edgar Jones.
Daisy Edgar Jones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of those performances were great, and this one had 2 more that are in that just like unbelievable tier with Dakota Fanning,
Elle Fanning,
and
Nicholas
Nicholas
Hoult.
Hoult. Yeah. But they were magnetic, man. And then Leo and the rest of court was also just phenomenal.
I mean, Adam Godley, the guy who played the Archbishop, was unreal. Sasha Darwin, the guy who plays Orlo, was awesome.
Orlo.
Phoebe Fox, who plays Mariel, was great.
I mean,
every
truly,
character is fun.
It's again to talk about how it had everything. It's an ensemble cast, right? And yet the 2 leads are still stand out.
Yes.
I mean, like every performance was phenomenal. I loved all of these characters, and but Nicholas Hoult and Elle Fanning, I mean, they were just they're on a different level. Even while you love him and you hate him, and their chemistry is so much fun to watch, even though you're rooting for her and Leo. So it just made you feel every which direction, right?
You root for her and Orlo, right? Is who we root for, right? I'm sorry. Orlo is the dude who's got glasses and is kind of a poon. Okay. Yeah, Sebastian de Souza, whatever, plays Leo, and also phenomenal. Yeah, you're rooting for them. You're watching her sort of navigate. Like, she's in this position of incredible power and importance, and she wants to make this great difference in this country that she is now a queen to, but she has to balance that against, 1, her life possibly being taken away, and then 2, this insane literal sociopath that she is married to, and his insane family and the insane court and everyone surrounding him. So
Yeah.
it just brought the most to the table out of all these shows.
Yeah, and I mean,
It brought the
talk
most.
about we talk about like how just the looks, right? Like, oh my god, production design, the wardrobes, the sets, like everything was just so on point here. The just phenomenal writing. It really crackled, very witty, very funny. And the direction was superb as well. I really can't say enough good things about the show. It was yeah, it did the most, man. It made me feel the most types of ways. It made me love it all of its characters for better and for worse. And I just yeah, it was the number one for me.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the irony of there being a pandemic in the show and the main character, obviously, Catherine, taking a vaccine in front of everyone
Yeah,
as an
yeah.
example to the people that, look, this is safe. We all need to take this or we're all going to die. And then that literally unfolding as every politician has had to go on TV and be like, poke me with the needle, doc. So that people will be like, all right, I trust this. I trust this. Yeah, The Great was my number one and Barrett's number one. If you haven't watched it yet, you must. Ton of incredible shows this year. You and I spoke to the oddness of 2020, and it was an odd one. We kind of had these things come out of left field, like Queen's Gambit, like Tiger King. These few things that took over the world and kind of got all of us talking. But then there were the expected things like and Dave. Then there were the expected things like Ozark. You know, what else? Dark. We knew that was coming. The Great was one that was really, really was a surprise for me too, I guess. In terms of Devs was a surprise. The Third Day was a surprise. 000 was a surprise. It was a strange year. One that I'm happy, all things said and done, that we got enough good TV shows to get me through it without losing my mind.
Yeah. Just a couple more that I want to mention, not as honorable mentions, but as ones that you and I kind of missed a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're on a lot of year-end lists. Obviously, we've said it over and over again, but we missed Better Call Saul this year. We are at this point now. I'm kind of waiting for it to get on Netflix so that I don't have to deal with like jumping through hoops to watch it on AMC.
Right.
We'll see though, but certainly will be. I will be prepared for the final season of that show because it's a weird one. Two of my favorite shows, Maisel. I just waited a whole year to watch to watch season 3. I love Better Call Saul, man. I don't know why it slipped by. And
look, there was a bunch of stuff like that for me.
Too late to catch up, and now it's like in this weird ether where it's like, well, now I have time, so I might as well watch this other stuff. Yep. Like, so that one just slipped through.
That's there for me too. It's one that I want to give a lot of shouts to. It's obviously one of the best shows of the year. A lot of people have it on their top 10, top 5 lists, and I love Better Call Saul as well. It slipped into the same strange place for me. Can't wait to get caught up.
And then a new one on HBO that I'm hearing a lot of chatter about is called Industry.
Yes, I have heard a lot of good things about Industry,
which I would like to get into. And then this has been really kind of a weird week, a weird holidays. Laura and I didn't do anything basically for the first time ever. So we actually have had lots of couch time. It's not something that I'm used to beyond, you know, the hour and a half to 2 hours.
One of us.
So I mentioned starting The Crown.
Yeah.
We have also started a show whose season 2 was very popular this year. It's a Hulu one. It's called What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, dude. So I watched this movie back in the day, remember?
Okay, yeah. So
yeah, and I loved it. It was hilarious.
So Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords and Taika Waititi, who directed some Mandalorian, was the voice of the droid, directed Thor Ragnarok, directed and starred in Jojo Rabbit, like, you know, just quite a phenomenal guy out there.
He also Hollywood. Directed and wrote the movie with Jermaine Clement as well.
Right. So they star in the movie.
Yeah.
They are writers and they're in the writer's room and they're the creators of the TV show, but they do not.
I mean, they did that shit for the movie too. They directed and wrote the movie as well.
Yeah, right. So they're behind the scenes on the TV show, but they're not acting in it. Anyway, we've crushed like 5 or 6 episodes already. Very, very funny.
Okay,
like
gotta watch this
super
then.
funny.
Gotta watch this then.
I think you'll really, really dig it. It's mockumentary style, so it kind of has that Parks and Rec office vibe to it, but then it's also really weird and British and hilarious. I mean, it's just so funny.
Based on my idea or my takeaways from after I watched the film, I'm guessing the television show's right up my alley.
Yeah. And then one honorable mention that I did miss. It was on my top 5 halfway. It got bumped by some other stuff, and again, it mostly didn't make it because I'm really more giving it its lifetime achievement award here rather than its one great season, but is The Good Place. Which I just want to mention again as really phenomenal TV show.
I was kind of surprised that you didn't have it on your list.
It's I don't know. I don't know if we've put a true I'd have to go back and look at last year, but kind of like in the same vein as the superhero show, putting a series finale season on your top 10
feels a little like on.
They're usually not the best seasons,
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you kind of feel almost obligated to.
Right. So
you end up not doing it.
I thought that that show came to a really great end, but was it the very best season of that show? Did it? Maybe not. And in the end, stuff that really just like took me more by surprise, like Ted Lasso,
right?
Kind of bumped it off.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Good lists though.
Yeah.
Great lists. Good stuff. The great being the top of both of ours again. Yeah. That'll do it for today's episode of OCC, produced by Mike Moody Garcia of Permanent Record Studios in Austin, Texas. Huge thanks again to our sponsor from today, Leesa. Hit leesa.com/dragon and get 15% off your mattress. If you already have a Leesa in every room in your house, then you can support us here at OCC directly by going to patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles and joining us all 2021 as we tackle HBO's classic crime drama, The Sopranos, episode by episode, spoiler-free, ad-free, friendly to first-time and rewatchers. Barrett's a first-time Sopranos viewer. I've rewatched it several times. We're discussing spoiler-free episode by episode, pod by pod, right there on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. Barrett and I have done through episode 4. We've got episode 5 upcoming this week. It'll drop Thursday afternoon. Patreon, patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. Go through. It's just $5 to join the Crustacean Nation, our smaller tier, and get access to those podcasts each and every week as we work our way through The Sopranos. Or you can do the $10 tier and get a more substantial package in the Mollusk Militia on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles as well. Barrett, are you enjoying The Sopranos thus far?
Man, it's yeah. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I mean, we're halfway through almost one of not the best seasons of the show as far as
no, it's not
what I understand. And I'm like Kramer, man. I'm loving every minute of it. And it's exceeded my expectations. It's really, it's really, really fun. The show, even in its infant stage here, you can see why it's good and why it's going to get better. It's very clear. And man, God, let me tell you this. It's not hard to do an episode every week about every single episode, man. There's so much to talk about. The 90s and the 2000s vibe is ripe for content as well. Yeah. And so we're getting kind of like, we're just having a great conversation. We're talking plot, we're talking character, but we're also just talking about about TV in general and what this show did for it. And then also how funny it is to look back at this late 90s time capsule as well. So man, it's just been really fun. I'm very, very happy that this is what we're doing on Patreon for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I am as well. Come join Barrett and I on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles for those of you who want to ride with us and watch The Sopranos for the first time. Again, it's spoiler-free, friendly to first-time viewers, but also if you want to rewatch it, seen it before, I give enough insight and commentary that's sort of appreciable for everybody that's a rewatcher as well, to where it kind of gives you a different twist on it. Come through patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles and ride with us through The Sopranos, one of the greatest, if not the greatest television series of all time, ad-free. So support us and get more content in the form of some of the best podcasting that Barrett and I have ever done so far through 4 episodes.
Everybody's
really,
saying
really
that.
enjoyed
Everybody's
it. Everybody's saying it. Everybody in the industry is saying it. Yeah, we are the new gold standard. Follow us on social media, since we're the new gold standard, for updates on our show and when episodes are coming out and what we're doing. We're on Instagram at Oysters, Clams, Cockles, at Oysters, Clams, Cockles on Instagram. On Twitter, we're at Clams and Cockles. And then we're on Facebook.com/Oysters, Clams, Cockles. You can follow me, Ross Bolen, on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at WRBOLEN, at WRBolen on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And listen to the Ross Bolen podcast, my mental health and humor show, wherever you listen to OCC. Barrett, where can we follow you on social media and keep up with your life and all the amazing things that you do?
At Barrett Dudley on the Grom. And
Instagram.
I just want to remind everybody about our new slogan that we came up with and didn't steal from anywhere. It's not TV. It's OCC.
It's OCC. Yeah. That's
a merch coming soon.
Yep. It's not TV. It's OCC. Very original and groundbreaking, world-changing slogan that Barrett and I came up with on this show.
Yeah.
You're welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. For everybody in the Crustacean Nation and Mollusk Militia, we'll see y'all later in the week for your Sopranos coverage, episode 5 of the Sopranos season
college. 1. I love college.
One of my personal favorites of the season, Barrett. It actually opens with that song instead of the traditional woke up this morning and got yourself a gun
crazy.
Song.
Do something crazy. Freshman.
We'll see y'all next week. Until then, goodbye, friends.